The chamber was dying. That was all Elena Vasquez could think as she watched the greatest minds in the galaxy admit defeat. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 hours, and every species present looked smaller than when they started. Above them, the holographic display showed the devastation in cruel detail. Red markers spread across the star map like a disease. Each red dot was a dead world. Each cluster was an extinct civilization. The Vexthor swarm had returned after 10,000 years of silence, and they were hungry. Elena sat in the human delegation seat and tried not to show her fear. Humanity had only been part of the council for 73 years. They were the youngest species at this table, the newest, the most primitive. And now everyone was looking at them like they might hold the answer to extinction. The Etheri ambassador spoke first. Its crystalline body caught the light from the hologram and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. When it spoke, its voice was like wind chimes in a storm. "We have tried everything," it said. "Our quantum disruptors phase through them. Our reality anchors mean nothing. We deployed dimensional weapons that should have erased them from existence. They adapted in minutes. In minutes. Technology we spent millennia developing, and they just learned." The Mindra delegate sat silent, but Elena could feel the edges of its thoughts pressing against her mind. Despair. Ancient cold despair. The Mindra had existed for 50,000 years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall. They had witnessed the birth of stars and watched them die, and now they were afraid. 17 worlds, the Loch'nari commander said, its 4 arms gesturing at the hologram. 17 worlds in 3 months. Populations in the billions. The swarmlands they consume, they move on. We sent our best fleets. They were destroyed. We sent experimental weapons. They were worse than useless because the swarm learned from them. Every weapon we use teaches them how to defeat the next one. Elena watched the elder races talk. She had been briefed on the Vexthor before arriving. Ancient records said they had come before, in an era when the current civilizations were still learning to make fire. They had consumed 1/3 of the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing. No one knew why they left. No one knew why they had returned. But Elena knew what they were. They were like locusts. They appeared, they fed, they destroyed everything in their path, and the galaxy had forgotten how to fight them. "Perhaps we should consider evacuation," suggested the Viridian ambassador, its scales shifting through nervous color patterns. "Move our populations to the outer rim. Buy time to develop new weapons. Evacuation to where?" the Etheri responded. "The swarm is spreading in all directions. Our projections show they will reach every inhabited system within 2 years. There is nowhere to run." Silence fell over the chamber. Elena could feel it pressing down on her chest. This was it. This was how civilizations ended. Not with war or natural disaster, but with slow, creeping acceptance that death was coming and nothing could stop it. Then the council leader, an ancient being whose species name translated roughly as the First Voices, turned its massive head toward the human delegation. Its eyes were older than human recorded history. They had seen empires rise and fall, and now they looked at Elena with something she had never seen in them before. Hope, humanity, it said, and the word echoed through the chamber. "You are young. Your technology is primitive by our standards, but you are also different. Your species thinks in ways we do not. You solve problems with methods we would never consider. Perhaps this is what we need, a perspective uncorrupted by millennia of civilization." Elena felt every eye in the room turn to her. Species that could manipulate reality itself were looking at humanity for answers. It would have been funny if it were not so terrifying. She stood slowly, her chair scraping against the crystal floor. The sound was very loud in the silence. "You want our help," she said. It was not a question. "We are asking," the council leader replied. "We are begging. Help us find a solution or we all perish together." Elena looked at the hologram again, at the red markers spreading across the galaxy like blood in water. She thought about Earth, about the cities she had grown up in, about the billions of humans who had no idea their existence hung by a thread. She thought about human history, about the wars they had fought, about the weapons they had built, about the terrible creative ways humans had found to destroy each other over thousands of years. The elder races called humanity primitive, barbaric, uncivilized. They had no idea how right they were. "I need to be very clear about something," Elena said. and her voice was steady even though her heart was racing. You are asking humanity for help, but you need to understand that we do not solve problems the way you do. We are not elegant. We are not efficient. We do not minimize collateral damage or worry about preserving resources for future generations. The council leader tilted its head. We do not understand. When humanity fights, Elena said slowly, we fight to survive. And when we fight to survive, we do not fight to win territory or resources or honor. We fight to end things. Permanently. Completely. Without mercy or second chances. A ripple of confusion went through the assembled species. The Etheria's crystalline structure flickered uncertainly. The Mindra delegate leaned forward, trying to understand. You asked what makes humanity different, Elena continued. I will tell you. Every species in this room evolved to survive. But humanity evolved to survive on a death world. We climbed to the top of our food chain by being more vicious, more adaptable, and more willing to do terrible things than anything else on our planet. We did not become the dominant species because we were the strongest or the smartest. We became dominant because we were the most ruthless. She pulled up her own datapad and added a file to the shared hologram. Images appeared. Cities in flames. Mushroom clouds rising over devastation. Oceans boiling. Atmospheres burning. This is what humans do to each other when we fight, Elena said quietly. This is what we are capable of. And you are asking us to turn these capabilities toward an enemy we have no reason to show mercy. The chamber was completely silent now. The elder races were staring at the images with something approaching horror. They fought wars, yes. They had conflicts. But they fought with rules. With honor. With consideration for the future. They had never seen anything like what humanity had done to itself. So I ask you again, Elena said, and her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. Are you prepared for our answer? Because if you ask humanity to fight, we will fight our way. And our way is not clean. It is not honorable. It is not something you will be proud of when it is over. The council leader looked at her for a long moment. Then it looked at the hologram, at the red markers spreading across the galaxy, at the death of everything they had built over millennia. We are prepared, it said finally. Help us, please. Elena nodded slowly. She had warned them. That was all she could do. Then I need to return to Earth immediately, she said. We have a lot of work to do. The war room beneath Geneva was built during the last great conflict between human nations, back before first contact with alien life. It had been designed to survive nuclear war, asteroid strikes, and every other disaster humans could imagine. Now it housed representatives from every major military power on Earth, along with scientists, strategists, and the people who made the hardest decisions. Elena stood at the head of the long table and looked at the faces staring back at her. General Marcus Webb from the North American Alliance, Admiral Chen from the Pan-Asian Coalition, Commander Okonkwo from the African Union, Dr. Sarah Reeves from the Scientific Council, 24 others. The best and brightest humanity had to offer. She had shown them the same hologram the Council had shown her. The red markers, the dead worlds, the spreading threat that would reach Earth within 2 years if left unchecked. So they want our help, General Webb said when she finished. His voice was rough, worn down by decades of military service. The species that can bend space and manipulate quantum fields want help from the primitives. They are desperate, Elena replied. They have tried everything in their arsenal. Weapons we cannot even understand. And it all failed. The swarm adapts faster than they can innovate. Dr. Reeves leaned forward, her fingers steepled in front of her face. She was a xenobiologist, one of the few humans who had studied the swarm from recovered samples. The problem is their methodology, she said. The elder races fight wars with precision. They target military installations. They use surgical strikes. They minimize civilian casualties and environmental damage. Every weapon they design is meant to be efficient and clean. And that is why they are losing. Admiral Chen said quietly. Dr. Reeves nodded. Exactly. The Vexthor evolved to survive. Every attack teaches them. Every weapon shows them what to expect next. The elder races keep trying to fight them with honor and restraint, and the swarm just learns and adapts. They need something the swarm has never seen before. Something barbaric, Commander Okonkwo said. It was not a question. Elena met his eyes. Yes, the silence that followed was heavy. Everyone in this room knew human history. They knew what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. They had studied the wars, the genocides, the terrible weapons humans had built to destroy each other. "What are we talking about?" asked General Webb. "What kind of response?" Elena pulled up a new display. Numbers and diagrams filled the air above the table. Weapon specifications, yield calculations, casualty estimates that made some people in the room look away. "The elder races use weapons designed to target the enemy while preserving the battlefield," she said. "We need to do the opposite. We need weapons that do not target anything, weapons that destroy everything." Dr. Reeves stood and walked to the display. She manipulated the hologram, bringing up schematics that had been classified for decades. "Relativistic kinetic kill vehicles," she said, highlighting one design. "Asteroids accelerated to 0.9 the speed of light. When they hit a planet, they release more energy than 1,000 nuclear weapons. The impact creates temporary fusion reactions in the atmosphere. Nothing survives." She moved to another schematic. "Stellar compression bombs. They destabilize a star's fusion reactions, causing it to expand and consume its own planetary system. The process is irreversible." Another diagram appeared. This one made several people shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Cascade fusion charges," Dr. Reeves continued, "designed to ignite gas giants. Turn them into temporary stars. Everything in the inner system burns. The planet, its moons, any ships, any swarm presence, everything." "You are talking about genocide," someone said from the end of the table. "System-wide genocide." "No," Elena said firmly. "I am talking about survival. The swarm will reach Earth. That is not a possibility, it is a certainty. When they do, they will consume every human being on this planet. They will strip our world down to bedrock and move on. So we have a choice. We can die with honor, following the elder race's rules of civilized warfare, or we can fight to survive." General Webb leaned back in his chair. "The Council will never approve this. They will see it as barbarism." "They do not have to approve it," Admiral Chen said. "They asked for our help. They will get it our way or they will get nothing." Elena nodded. "That is exactly what I told them. They want humanity's solution. This is it. We do not fight to win territory. We do not fight to capture resources. We fight to end threats permanently." "What about the worlds the swarm has already taken?" Commander Okonkwo asked. "Some still have populations. Billions of civilians trapped on those planets." The room went very quiet. Elena felt the weight of the question like a physical thing pressing down on her chest. "If we use these weapons," she said slowly, "everyone on those worlds will die. The swarm, the remaining population, everyone. That is murder," someone whispered. "That is war," General Webb said harshly. "Real war. Not the sanitized version the elder races practice. We bomb the swarm, we bomb everything around them. We do not have the luxury of precision." Dr. Reeves spoke up again, her voice steady despite the topic. "The swarm has already killed most populations on the worlds they have taken. Our intelligence suggests less than 10% survival rates after the first month of occupation. Those people are living in hell waiting to be consumed. We would be ending their suffering. We would be ending their lives," Elena corrected. "Let us not pretend this is mercy. This is pragmatism. This is survival math. We sacrifice millions to save billions. We destroy systems to save the galaxy." The debate went on for hours. People argued. Some walked out. Others stayed and reluctantly agreed. By the time the sun rose over Geneva, they had a plan. A terrible, brutal plan that would save the galaxy by burning parts of it to ash. Elena sent the proposal to the Galactic Council that afternoon. The response came 3 days later. She read it alone in her quarters, far from the politicians and generals who would want to analyze every word. The message was short. The council leader had written it personally. "We are horrified by your proposal. We are sickened by the methods you describe. We are appalled that intelligent beings would even consider such weapons. But we are also dying. The swarm has taken 6 more worlds since your departure. We have no other options. Your plan is approved. May the universe forgive us all." Elena read the message 3 times. Then she deleted it and went to tell her staff to begin preparations. The elder races had given humanity permission to do what humans did best. They had given them permission to wage total war. The Korvax system had been beautiful once. Elena had seen the records. Blue oceans, green continents, cities that glowed like jewels at night. 4 billion people called it home. Now it was a swarm beachhead, and 4 billion Vexthor had turned the garden world into a feeding ground. The human fleet arrived 3 months after the council's approval. It was not an impressive sight by galactic standards. Converted mining ships with weapons bolted to their hulls, military dreadnoughts that looked crude compared to the elegant vessels of the elder races, civilian transports refitted for war, but every ship carried weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Elena stood on the bridge of the flagship, a repurposed colony ship named the Indomitable. Around her, the crew worked in tense silence. They all knew what they were about to do. Some had volunteered immediately. Others had needed convincing. But they were all here now, preparing to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. Observer fleet holding position at the system's edge, reported the communications officer. All council species represented. They want to watch. Of course they did. The elder races did not believe humanity's crude methods would work. They expected to watch the swarm adapt and destroy the human fleet. Then they would write off humanity as another failed attempt and continue their slow retreat toward extinction. Scan results? Elena asked. The tactical officer pulled up a hologram. The Korvax system appeared above the command table, and Elena felt her stomach turn. The planet was covered in a dark mass. Swarm structures grew like cancer across the surface. Ships moved in swarms between the planet and its moons. The Vexthor had made this system their own. 4 billion confirmed hostiles on the surface, the officer said. Another million in orbital structures. The planet's original population. We are not detecting any life signs. Everyone on the bridge went quiet. 4 billion people had lived on that world. Now they were all dead, consumed by the swarm. The Korvax had been one of the Council's founding species. They had built civilizations that spanned centuries. And in 3 months, the Vexthor had erased them. The gas giant? Elena asked, forcing her voice to stay steady. Target confirmed. Korvax Prime 7th planet. Hydrogen-helium composition. Minimal metal content. Perfect for cascade fusion. Elena looked at the gas giant on the display. It was massive, larger than Jupiter. Beautiful bands of colored clouds wrapped around its surface. It had 16 moons, 2 of which had supported research stations before the swarm arrived. In a few minutes, it would become a temporary star. The fusion reaction would consume everything in the inner system. The swarm, the planet they had infested, the moons, all of it would burn. General channels open, Elena ordered. I want everyone to hear this. Fleet, council observers, everyone. The communications officer nodded. Red lights blinked across the console as every ship in the system tuned to the broadcast. Elena took a breath. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Unified Human Defense Fleet. To the council observers, I want you to understand what you are about to witness. Humanity did not choose this path lightly. We warned you that our methods would be brutal. We told you we do not fight the way you fight. You asked for our help anyway, so we will help you the only way we know how. She paused, looking at the planet on the screen, at the swarm that had consumed an entire civilization. The Vexthor swarm has taken this system. They have killed 4 billion Korvax. They are using this world as a breeding ground to spread further into council space. The elder races tried to fight them with honor and restraint. It failed. So now humanity will show you what it means to fight for survival. She turned to her weapons officer. Arm the cascade fusion charges. Target Korvax Prime. The officer's hands moved across the controls. Charges armed. Firing solution locked. Elena looked at her crew, at the men and women who had volunteered to be part of this. They looked back at her with grim determination. They knew what they were about to do. They knew they would never be able to forget it. Helios Protocol, Elena said quietly. Authorization Vasquez Alpha 7, execute. The weapons officer pressed a single button. 3 missiles launched from the Indomitable. They were small, barely visible against the dark of space. They accelerated toward the gas giant, picking up speed as they fell into its gravity well. The fusion charges inside them were humanity's most terrible creation. Bombs designed to start chain reactions in hydrogen-rich environments. Bombs built to turn planets into stars. The missiles penetrated deep into the gas giant's atmosphere. Then they detonated. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a bright point appeared in the giant's atmosphere. It grew and grew. The hydrogen began to fuse, releasing energy that triggered more fusion. The chain reaction spread through the planet's core in seconds. The gas giant became a star. It was not a stable star. It would burn out in hours instead of billions of years. But for those few hours, it would burn with the intensity of a young sun. Radiation poured out in waves. The blast front expanded at the speed of light. The inner system died. The Korvax homeworld, already dead, burned to bare rock in minutes. Its atmosphere was stripped away. Its oceans boiled into space. The swarm structures on the surface melted and vaporized. 4 billion Vexthor died so fast they could not even register the threat before they ceased to exist. The moons followed. Research stations that had housed thousands of scientists became expanding clouds of plasma. Orbital structures fell into the planet's gravity well and burned up in the superheated atmosphere. The human fleet had positioned itself at a safe distance behind shields designed to handle stellar radiation. But even through the protection, Elena could see the light from the dying system. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Swarm response? She asked. The tactical officer stared at his screen. They are retreating. The swarm ships in the outer system are breaking off. They are leaving. A murmur ran through the bridge. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Vexthor swarm was retreating from a battle. 47 seconds, someone whispered. It took 47 seconds to kill them all. Elena nodded slowly. She felt numb. They had just destroyed an entire system. They had killed 4 billion swarm organisms and made a planet uninhabitable for the next million years. And it had worked. The swarm, which had never retreated before, was running away. Communications from the Council observers, the officer said. Multiple channels. They are. Admiral, I do not think I should repeat what they are saying. Elena closed her eyes. She could imagine horror, disgust, accusations of war crimes. The elder races had just watched humanity do something they would never forgive. Open a channel to the Council fleet, she said. When the connection established, she spoke clearly and without apology. We destroyed the swarm presence in this system. We made this world uninhabitable for millennia. We killed billions of organisms. And the swarm is retreating for the first time in recorded history. You asked us to help. This is how humanity helps. If you want us to stop, say so now. Otherwise, we will continue. System by system. World by world. Until the swarm is driven from Council space or we are all dead. The silence that followed was long. Then the Council leader's voice came through, ancient and tired. Continue, it said. Just one word. But that word gave humanity permission to wage total war across the galaxy. Elena looked at her crew. Set course for the next swarm-infested system. We have work to do. 8 months. That was how long it took for humanity to break the Vexthor swarm. 8 months of relentless warfare that would echo through galactic history forever. 8 months that changed everything. Elena had stopped counting the dead worlds after the first month. The numbers became meaningless. 17 systems rendered lifeless. 32 zones marked as permanent hazards. Trillions of swarm organisms destroyed. But the swarm kept dying, and that was all that mattered. The human fleet moved from system to system like a plague. When they arrived, there was a swarm presence. When they left, there was only silence. They used every terrible weapon humans had ever dreamed of. Relativistic missiles that struck planets with the force of extinction events. Stellar compression bombs that aged stars by millions of years in hours. Artificial singularities that swallowed swarm hive structures whole. The elder races watched in horror. But they also watched the red markers on their maps disappear one by one. Systems that had been lost to the swarm were being cleansed. The Vexthor were dying faster than they could reproduce. For the first time since the invasion began, the Council started to believe they might survive. But survival came at a terrible cost. Elena stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and read the latest casualty reports. The human fleet had started with 200 ships. Now they had 93. The swarm had learned to target human vessels specifically. They could not adapt to the weapons humanity used, but they could still fight back. And they did with savage desperation. 40,000 human soldiers were dead. 40,000 people who had volunteered to save a galaxy that had once looked down on their species as primitive. They died in ship battles. They died in reactor failures. They died in suicide runs when there was no other way to complete the mission. Captain Sarah Chen had died in the Viridian system. Her ship, the Defiant, had rammed a swarm mothership at full velocity, taking both vessels out in a fusion explosion visible from 3 light-years away. The Council had declared her a hero. Elena just remembered her as the woman who told terrible jokes during briefings. Commander James Walker had died in the Loknari system. He had piloted his damaged ship directly into a gas giant's core while it was undergoing cascade fusion. The blast had been so intense it had temporarily blinded sensors across the entire system. He saved 2 other ships by blocking the radiation with his own vessel. The list went on. Names, faces, people Elena had known. People who had trusted her leadership, and she had led them to die for a galaxy that feared what humanity had become. Admiral, her communications officer called out, "We are receiving a priority transmission from Council High Command." Elena pulled herself back to the present. Put it through. The hologram that appeared showed the council leader. It looked older than when Elena had last seen it. The weight of the war was visible in its posture, in the way it held itself. "Admiral Vasquez," it said, "we have news. Our long-range sensors have detected a major swarm concentration in the Terminus Reach. It appears to be their primary staging ground. If your projections are correct, this is where they have been coordinating their expansion." Elena felt her pulse quicken. They had been hunting for the swarm's main base for months. Every system they cleansed had been a branch, but the root had remained hidden. "Until now, how many?" she asked. 15 trillion organisms? Maybe more. They have fortified 3 systems with organic structures that span light minutes. It is the largest concentration of swarm biomass we have ever recorded. 15 trillion. Elena felt the number like a physical weight. That was more than they had killed in all previous engagements combined. "We need to hit them," she said, "now before they can disperse again." "The Council agrees," the leader said. "But Admiral, we must ask, can your fleet handle an operation of this scale? Your losses have been significant." Elena looked around her bridge, at the crew that had been fighting for 8 months straight. They were exhausted. Their ships were damaged. They had watched friends die. But she knew what they would say if she asked them. "We will get it done," she said. "Send us the coordinates." The fleet gathered for the final assault 3 days later. 93 ships, less than half their original strength. But they carried enough firepower to sterilize a dozen systems, and they were all volunteers. Every single person had been given the chance to transfer out. None had taken it. Elena addressed them before they jumped to the Terminus Reach. Her words were broadcast to every ship in the fleet. "We have come a long way," she said. 8 months ago, the galaxy was dying. The swarm was unstoppable. The elder races had given up hope. Then they asked humanity for help, and we answered. We answered with everything we had. We answered with weapons that horrified them. We answered with methods they called barbaric, but we answered. She paused, looking at the faces on her screen. Young and old, from every nation on Earth, all of them far from home, all of them willing to die. Today we face the largest swarm concentration ever recorded. 15 trillion organisms waiting to spread across the galaxy. If we fail, everything we have fought for dies with us. But we will not fail, because we are human, and humans do not quit. We do not surrender. We do not accept extinction. We fight until we win, or we fight until we die. That is what makes us different. She raised her hand in salute. All ships, prepare to jump. Let us go save the galaxy one more time. The fleet jumped together, 93 points of light vanishing from normal space and reappearing in the Terminus Reach. What they found there would haunt survivors' dreams for the rest of their lives. The swarm had built structures that defied understanding. Living megastructures that wrapped around stars. Organic ships the size of moons. Breeding grounds that spawned millions of new organisms every hour. The 3 systems were more swarm than space. It was like looking into the heart of a nightmare. Execute Apocalypse Protocol, Elena ordered. Every weapon humanity had brought was unleashed at once. Relativistic missiles streaked toward planets at near light speed. Cascade fusion charges dove into gas giants. Stellar compression bombs locked onto the 3 systems' stars. Artificial singularities bloomed in the space between worlds. The Terminus Reach died in fire and fury. 3 stars went supernova in controlled detonations. Planets cracked and burned. The swarm's living structures were torn apart by gravitational forces that ripped reality itself. 15 trillion organisms screamed and died as their home was systematically annihilated. The human fleet paid for every meter. Swarm ships threw themselves at the attackers with suicidal desperation. 27 more human vessels were destroyed. Another 8,000 soldiers died. But they held. They held and they kept firing until there was nothing left to kill. When it was over, the Terminus Reach was gone. 3 systems had become an expanding field of debris and radiation. And the Vexthor swarm, the ancient threat that had haunted the galaxy for thousands of years, was broken. Elena sat in her captain's chair and watched the sensors confirm what everyone already knew. The swarm was retreating. Not just from this battle, but from Council space entirely. They were leaving the galaxy, running from the species that had proven willing to destroy everything to stop them. "It is done," her tactical officer said quietly. Elena nodded. Yes, it is done. But as she looked at the casualty lists scrolling across her screen, at the names of the 48,000 humans who had died to save the galaxy, she wondered what they had really won. They had saved billions, but they had done it by becoming exactly what the elder races feared most. And that fear would never go away. The victory celebrations lasted for weeks across Council space. Planets that had prepared for extinction through festivals, species that had been planning evacuation started rebuilding. The Vexthor swarm was gone, driven beyond the galactic rim by a force they could not adapt to or overcome. The galaxy had been saved. But Elena Vasquez felt no joy as she stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable and watched the parade of ships passing by. Vessels from every Council species had come to offer thanks. The Aetheri sent crystalline sculptures that captured starlight in patterns representing gratitude. The Mindra projected thoughts of appreciation that resonated through the minds of every human crew member. The Lucknari offered genetic codes for advanced medical treatments that would extend human lifespans by decades. Gifts, honors, medals. All of it felt hollow. Elena thought about the 48,000 names on the memorial wall, about the 32 dead zones that would remain lifeless for millennia, about the 17 systems humanity had sterilized to save the rest. The price of victory was written in fire across the galaxy. "They fear us now," General Webb said, coming to stand beside her. He had traveled from Earth for the official ceremonies. His uniform was covered in medals from Council species, honors for his role in planning the campaign. He looked at them with disgust. "Yes," Elena replied simply. It was obvious in how the elder races interacted with humans now. The Aetheri no longer spoke condescendingly about human technology. The Mindra shielded their thoughts when humans were nearby. The Lucknari, who had once been casual and friendly, now maintained respectful distance at all times. "Did you see the latest Council proposal?" Webb asked. Elena had. It had arrived that morning, dressed in diplomatic language but clear in its intent. The Galactic Council wanted to establish an autonomous zone around human space. They called it a gesture of respect for humanity's contribution. They said it would give humans room to develop without interference. They promised full Council status and all associated benefits, but Elena could read between the lines. They wanted humanity isolated, contained, given space to exist but kept at arm's length from the civilized galaxy, quarantined by another name, Webb said, giving voice to what they were both thinking. Elena nodded. "They asked us to save them, we did. And now they cannot look at us without remembering what we are capable of." The official ceremony was held 3 days later in the Council chamber where this had all begun. Elena stood before the assembled species and received humanity's recognition as saviors of the galaxy. The Council leader presented her with the Star of Unity, the highest honor the Council could give. Then came the other proposal. The autonomous zone, presented as gratitude, sold as respect, revealed as fear. Elena had spent 3 days debating what to say. The human delegation was divided. Some wanted to reject the proposal, to force the Council to accept humanity as full equals. Others argued for acceptance, saying humanity needed time to process what they had done anyway. In the end, Elena made the decision herself. She was the one who had led the fleet. She was the one who had given the orders. The weight of this choice was hers to bear. When her turn came to speak, she stood before the Council and looked at each species in turn. The Aetheri with their crystalline beauty, the Mindra with their ancient wisdom, the Lucknari with their four-armed grace, all of them looking at her with gratitude mixed with barely concealed fear. "6 months ago," she began, "you called for help. The galaxy was dying. An ancient threat had returned. Your weapons had failed. Your strategies had failed. Everything you tried just taught the enemy how to defeat you better." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You turned to humanity in desperation. You asked the youngest species in this chamber, the most primitive by your standards, to save you. And I told you then what our help would cost. I told you we do not fight the way you fight. I warned you that our methods would horrify you. You agreed anyway because you had no other choice." The chamber was completely silent. Every species hung on her words. "We fought your war. We used weapons you would never use. We destroyed systems you would have tried to save. We killed not in millions or billions, but in trillions. We turned entire regions of space into dead zones that will remain lifeless for thousands of years. We did all of this because that was what survival required. Elena held up the Star of Unity, letting it catch the light. And you are grateful. I can see it in your faces. You are alive because of what we did. Your civilizations continue because 48,000 humans died fighting a war that was not even ours. But you are also afraid. You look at us and you see what we became in order to save you. You see the weapons we built, the methods we used, the lines we crossed without hesitation, and you realize that if we could do that to the swarm, we could do it to anyone. She saw heads nod around the chamber. At least they were honest enough to acknowledge the truth. So now you offer us an autonomous zone. You dress it up as respect and gratitude, but we both know what it really is. You want us contained. You want us at a safe distance where you can watch us but not have to interact with us daily. You want to honor us while keeping us away from your civilized society. The council leader started to speak, but Elena raised a hand. I am not angry, she said. I understand. Because the truth is we fear ourselves too. Every human who fought in this war will carry the weight of what we did for the rest of our lives. We destroyed worlds. We killed without mercy. We became the monsters you always worried we might be. And we did it all to save you. She looked around the chamber one more time. Humanity accepts your proposal. We will take the autonomous zone. Not because we are afraid of you, but because we need distance too. We need time to process what we have done. We need space to remember who we were before this war and decide who we want to be after it. You need time to stop seeing us as weapons. We need time to stop being them. She placed the Star of Unity on the council table. Keep this. Give it to the families of the 48,000 who died. Tell them the galaxy remembers. Tell them their sacrifice mattered. And when you look at your stars at night and feel safe because the swarm is gone, remember how that safety was bought. Remember what humanity gave up to save you. Elena turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, she said. If another threat comes, if the galaxy cries for help again, we will answer. We will always answer, because that is what humans do. We protect what needs protecting, even if it costs us everything, even if it means becoming something terrible. That is our burden. That is our gift to the universe. She walked out of the chamber to absolute silence. Behind her, the elder races sat with their thoughts processing what they had just heard, a promise and a warning all at once. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned UHS Peacekeeper. Earth hung in the viewport, blue and green and beautiful. The autonomous zone had been established. Human space now existed in a bubble of its own, connected to the council but separate from it. Trade continued. Diplomatic relations were maintained. But there was distance now, physical and psychological. The elder races sent their ships to human ports, but they did not linger. They conducted business quickly and efficiently, then returned to their own space. General Webb joined her at the viewport. He had retired from active service but still consulted on military matters. Together they watched Earth turn slowly in the darkness. Do you think we did the right thing? He asked. Elena considered the question. The swarm was gone. Billions of lives had been saved. Human casualties had been relatively light considering what they faced. By every objective measure, the campaign had been a success, but she thought about the dead worlds, about the names on the memorial wall, about the fear in the eyes of species that had once welcomed humanity as equals, about the isolation that now defined humanity's place in the galaxy. We did what we had to do, she said finally. Whether it was right or wrong, I do not think we will know for a long time. Maybe our grandchildren will be able to answer that question. We just have to live with the choice we made. Webb nodded slowly. The galaxy cried for help, and humanity answered, Elena finished. With everything we had, with everything we were willing to become. They will remember that. For better or worse, they will never forget. They stood together in silence, watching Earth turn. Below them, 8 billion humans went about their lives, most of them never knowing how close they had come to extinction. Most of them never knowing what their species had become to ensure their survival. The galaxy was safe. Humanity had saved it, and in saving it, they had ensured that no one would ever look at humans quite the same way again. They were no longer the youngest species at the table. They were no longer the primitives learning their place in galactic society. They were the species that had looked at extinction and answered with annihilation. They were the ones who fought not to win but to end. They were humanity, and the galaxy would never forget what that meant. Outside the window, a ship departed for the edge of human space. It would patrol the autonomous zone, watching for threats that might never come, but it would be ready. Humanity would always be ready, because they had learned the most important lesson in the universe. When humanity fights, it fights to survive.